Welcome, everybody. It's another webinar. I was going to say webinar Wednesday, but it's webinar Thursday. And today we are going to be covering some practical ways to use 3D in golf lessons. And we're excited to have you with us. I think there's going to be some great valuable information that you'll be able to take away immediately and go use in your own lessons. Today's target audience are golf coaches. Right now, our 3D system works for the golf swing, and everything we talk about today will be focused on golf, although we are working very hard to bring our 3D capabilities to more sports very soon. And so, as you can see on the screen, with me, joining me from Ireland today is Sergio Coyle Diez. Sergio, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about your journey in using 3D, and we'll cover off on some ways that you're doing it. So let's just kind of kick things off. Give us a little background on you, and yeah, take it away. Tell us a little bit about you, Sergio.
So I was told to keep this in wrap, okay? So I started being a player as my career. I turned pro in 2011, started playing. Fortunately, didn't have the game to be up there with the big boys, so I decided to go into coaching and came back from Spain in around 2016, did my PGA training. And then I did COVID hit, and from COVID, kind of gave me the change in direction of a coach, got me into technology, got me understanding kind of a bit of the biomechanics and understanding kind of motor pattern skills in golfers. And that's where it led me today, where I'm working with even tour pros, your everyday golfer, your weekend warriors, and even your beginners. So it's been a crazy journey the last 4 years, to be honest. It's just getting busier and busier. And I think it's one of the main reasons that's happening is because I see players making results. And when people start making results, they want to come back and they spread the word. And I'm the kind of a coach that kind of works on facts, not just guessing, and kind of use the tools I have around me to make the right decisions. I think that's a key part of my coaching is the tools I have around me kind of allows me to make decisions that sometimes I might guess myself, saying, I don't want to go down that road, but it's showing me that's the road I need to go down. So it's kind of a tool that's kind of very powerful if it's used the correct way. Um, that's a nutshell me in less
And
than what.
you're based in Dublin, but you're also coaching in Spain a fair amount, right?
Yeah, so I'm half Irish, half Spanish. So that's how we have the Sergio Coyle Diez part, the two Spanish names there. My mother's Spanish, dad is Irish, from a little town called Bellarina, north of Spain, Santander, where most golfers will know who he is. I was very lucky enough to meet him a few times and get a couple of lessons off him, and then kind of go back there every kind of 6 to 7 weeks, work with a couple of players I have there, and then kind of use the Onform app as a way of remotely working with them when I'm back at home in Ireland. So it's been kind of a really cool journey with Onform as well, allowing me the ability to kind of work with these guys in Spain while I'm back home. And then when I go back, I'm able to kind of give them more plans of actions of drills or whatever we're trying to execute.
Now, I got to know you maybe a year and a half or so ago. You're pretty prolific on the Facebook golf and teacher forum and the biomechanics forum, and I followed you for quite a while, or seen your feedback. As you kind of got into 3D and using lots of different systems, sometimes you were a little doubtful of what you saw. But give me a little journey on using 3D, and how often you're using it, and what where you come to today.
Yeah, so like the way I started the 3D, most coaches who get into 3D start saying, look, they were using 2D videos and then they started to go into 3D to get a different perspective, and what they were seeing in their head is what they were seeing in 3D. But my scenario wasn't really like that. I was kind of more into kind of looking at another way to bring another experience to my players. And I looked at 3D and everybody seemed to be getting it. It was kind of the fad about 4 or 5 years ago where everybody was talking about it. And I said, look, could I change my way of coaching using this to help my players better? I didn't see it where I saw the 3D as a way of what I was seeing in my head. I was just looking for something different to bring a different experience to my players and also value to my players. And then have kind of them showing the facts there. Look, this is what you're doing. This is, you may be feeling this, but this is showing the opposite, because we have a saying where feel versus real are opposites. So it was kind of, that's why I wanted to have it for that kind of biofeedback. And that's how I really got into it. Then I met a guy called Adam Murford who kind of got me into the 3D stuff. And during COVID, he kind of put me, like, we basically met every day online. Never met him before. He was in Madrid, an Irish guy from Wicklow Greystones. And from there, we just kept, during probably for the 2 years of COVID that we're in lockdown, kind of just every day going through the, and he's just kind of grinding me to understand the motion of the graphs, not the numbers itself. And then starting to understand the kinetics and the kinematics combined together to create what we call a motion sequence. So that's how I got into it, really.
Cool. Well, let's start kind of getting into things. Let me go to the next screen here on my presentation, and I wanted to give everybody a little bit of background on you. We're going to today talk about some 3D insights. What can you do with it, from comparisons to baselines to confirming what you see. We're going to have you do a live swing analysis, and I think it's really cool. People always want to know how others are using tools, so that'll be useful. And then we'll just talk a little bit about how people can use 3D as well. But before I turn you loose on some of this stuff, let's talk a little bit more. We just came out with 3D, a month and a half ago, and in the process of developing 3D inside Onform, we went through a lot of painstaking effort to test and do comparisons. So we brought you out to Colorado because you have an extensive background with EMS systems. Tell us, just give us a little background. When you came out to Colorado, what were you expecting, and what did you leave with as we were comparing with your existing systems?
Be honest, I was excited to go over because it was nice to get an insight to how Onform are doing it. And like, one of the things I really like about Onform, especially when I was starting to talk to you about the 3D, is how open you were. And that was really impressive. Not many companies are quite open in explaining what they're trying to do, and like just giving the insight of, this is what we want to try and achieve. This is how we're going to do it. And that would kind of make me more excited going over. And then meeting the team was incredible because I was able to ask questions that I couldn't probably ask from other companies. So that was cool. And then testing it I remember sitting there on the table, looking at the graphs and going, "Oh, this looks good." So it was kind of for me, a little bit of a game changer, because I think a lot of guys want to be able to have that portability of having an iPad, a phone, recording 2 or 3 things and getting some data on their phone or iPad straight away, rather than trying to hook somebody onto a system that takes 15, 20 minutes to set up. Now, let's not get us wrong. Like, it's predictable 3D, but it's getting so good. It's predicting quite well. And I'm very impressed. Like, I have a full system here. And when I kind of compare the data, it's very close. And like, when you look at the kind of the shape of the graphs, the motions, it's kind of bang on. And that's what I really like about it.
Well, you mentioned the shape of the graph. So for the folks out there that don't know, and by the way, feel free to use the Q&A button on Zoom to ask questions, and we'll have a time to hit those. But when Sergio was talking about shape of the graphs, I want to call attention to something that we did that, to our knowledge, nobody else has done. We put out what's called a model card, and I'm going to share that here. And the reason it's important, this is a PDF that you can find on our website if you go and look under our support website. A model card is something that basically tells you the applicability, the limitations, and accuracies of all the testing that we did. And so we put it out there for everybody to see, right? Like, let's be clear. Our 3D system is really good, but it's not going to be, it's not intended to be, and it really won't be as good as a lab-based $100,000 markered optical system. But that's exactly what we use to train all of our models. So this model card, I'll just scroll through it here. We have all kinds of information, details on the metrics we're tracking. I encourage you all to read it. But if I scroll down at the bottom here, the graphs that Sergio just mentioned look like this. And On the left, you can see, for example, this is the timing of pelvis rotation of 5 different swings from a pro that we had in the lab, and we had an EMS system rigged up to the pro, and this is what the graph looked like of the EMS system. These are what I think probably caught your attention the most, right, Sergio?
Yeah. It's just the way it was able to predict like the kind of consistency in the shape. Now, it's predictable 3D, so it's not going to be 100% match. But if you look at the shapes, they're kind of really close to what we're seeing on the EMS system. But also there was another I think it was another graph where we did a funky swing on my system and your system, and they were almost identical. And that's the one that was most spectacular to me, like doing a really funky swing, and I was able to track it on my system and on your system, and it was giving basically the graphs very similar. So that's really cool to see as well.
Yeah, cool. Well, I just wanted to call attention to that because it's an important piece. We're very open about what we're doing. It's only going to get better, and this is just the start of how to enable any golf coach to use 3D. Sergio, did I just lose you? Oh, he's back. There he is.
Sorry, got cut
Um,
off there.
again, the goal here is accessibility, right? The only time you've been able to use 3D in the past is in a lab or putting on a vest or the EMS system. And now we're trying to just make it more accessible so that it can be used in more ways. So let's just talk about that. Why use 3D in the first place?
So you can use it in multiple ways. One of the biggest ones we have to remember as golf coaches, we want to show players they're making changes because they might not feel they're making the changes. And if you can show certain numbers, certain positions that they're changing, but they might not feel it, they'll buy into the change much easier. And the problem is the nervous system is a big issue in most golfers when we're trying to make a movement change. So I feel like with my players, when I kind of make a change, I show them, they say, yeah, but I'm striking it poor. But the motion on how we're trying to make the change is in the right order. So it kind of gets them to buy in, understanding, okay, I'm making the change. I can see better results. Long term, that should result in better ball flight, which will end up leading to better scores in the course. And that's the end goal of golf, is to get a scorecard on the scorecard with the less shots possible.
That's right. I
So,
mean, are you using it? Is this something you only use with elite players, or who do you use it with?
so I use it with everybody. I use it with your weekend warriors, your once a month golfers, your pros, and my online students. I use it pretty much with everybody. Do I show them all the time? Probably not. I keep that more to myself. So in my studio, I have like 4 screens behind. I keep that away from the student. Then I have or 3 TVs behind me, and I might throw up 1 or 2 swings if I'm trying to show them certain things to let them buy into the change. But I use it with everybody, and there is a time and place for it. So to be honest with you, I think it's a really cool tool to have as part of your coaching.
Yeah, and it is a tool, right? Like I love what you said a minute ago that sometimes when you show a player the number, confirming a change, they may not feel it exactly, but you're seeing it, and you can help them confirm it, right? Like you're doing that already.
Yeah, 100%. Like, as you get good at using 3D, and I tell everybody, if you put a bit of effort into studying it, like anything we do, like most guys will have put the hours into learning how to use a launch monitor. If you put that kind of effort into learning 3D, there'll be like ways you kind of, okay, this player is, for arm's sake, the example I'm going to show you later of a player that I'm coaching in Spain, and he's based over in the States at the moment, but he tends to shut the face, and that's because he doesn't get enough elevation of the pelvis. So when we start creating more elevation of the pelvis, he's able to square that face up. And then on the launch monitor, rather than seeing the face close to target, we see it more open. So you'll start finding in your own way, okay, if I change this, what will happen? And you'll have that little key card in your head. Okay, so today this player is shutting the face. I'm going to add a little bit more vertical force by elevation of the pelvis. Boom, we have the face a little bit more open. Ball starts more right of target. So you'll find these little tricks, and I not call them tricks, but little kind of nuggets to work with your player in front of you when you kind of need to make a quick change with them.
Yeah, cool. I mean, the correlations between the movements, like whether it's pelvis lift or it might be a side bend, isn't learning as a coach what those things do and how they impact the golf ball ultimately what you're trying to figure out so that you can actually direct change?
100%. Like, we can argue that the wrist influences how the body moves, and the body influences how the wrist moves, and the arm structure, and that results in how the face is basically delivered back to the ball. So, like, knowing how these numbers work can really help you understand how changes in movements can happen. Like, for anybody who wants to really get into 3D, I think a really simple way is looking at positioning of the lower part of the body, so the pelvis and the thorax, and just understand what thrust, sway, and lift is, and then start adding the rotations into that. And I think if you can do that, at the end of the day, you'll make big changes, because for me, the biggest challenge with most players is controlling low point,
Mm.
vertical and lateral. So, if you can understand how sway and lift are going to influence your low points, you're going to make a change. You're going to have that player actually striking the ball better. I think if we can get a player just striking it better, he's going to buy into the changes you want to make down the road. So again, that's why I'm always a big fan of looking at positioning of the pelvis before I start even looking at any other number, side bends or even forward bends. What is the pelvis doing in from a sway, lift, and thrust, and what's the thorax doing to that? And then from there, then I'll start building my branches out. Now you will get good players that they will do that really well. So you have to start looking at other branches of the tree, as I say, to see where can we make more improvements to have better delivery to the ball, and then how does that change the flight, and then how does that produce on the course. So I think that where I would anybody getting into 3D, I kind of get them understand that them two parts, and if you understand it, it'll actually give you a better insight of what's happening with that player in front of you.
That's cool. You got to start with the core movements there. Something that we get asked all the time, right? And something I think is natural for people to feel is they look at the numbers. Most coaches have never been able to use 3D because it's really been restricted to a lab or expensive systems. But the first thing that we hear is like, okay, what's the number should be? They want to know what's a tour pro average? What's a normal pelvis rotation? Do you use comparisons? How do you use comparisons if you do?
In my opinion, I only try and look at it at the player in front of me. I don't try and put them into boxes, because I feel as humans, we're all going to be different. We're all going to move. Yes, we can say tour players do this and this. We can look at, for arm's sake, there's a coach called John Sinclair. A lot of people will know him. And one of his beliefs is that the best ball strikers will start shifting the pelvis towards the target before the pelvis completes the rotation. So known as shift. That's something I do see in pretty all good ball strikers. So that's kind of, I would take that as a belief because I see it. For other things, like for me, it's kind of not putting them into numbers, but how can I work back from impact to get it into a number that suits that player? So like we have Samuel, 40 degrees of rotation, no lift. When he actually strikes with pure controls the face, he has 35 degrees of rotation and about 3 centimeters of up with the pelvis, so lift the pelvis. So it's kind of working back to what you want the ball flight to do. And I think that's the most important part. Don't get bogged down on what the number should be. It's what the ball flight wants to do, what you want the ball flight to do with the player.
So I think what you just said, I really want to highlight that because I think this is really cool. It was a combination of you have some baselines for a player that you've learned that when they're hitting it well, their rotation might be this or their thrust might be that, and you're also using that to confirm, right? Like if they're maybe feeling like they're not hitting it well, you go back to the numbers and look at it. So those types of baselines per player aren't necessarily baselines or comparisons to tour numbers, but rather relative to that player and when they're striking it well.
100%. Like I have two tour pros that I don't coach them, but they come to me because I'm the only one in Ireland that has force plates and 3D. So they'll come to me around when the season ends, they'll get captured. Then during the year, they'll ring me and say, Sergio, look, I played really well last week. I'm striping it pure. Results were good. I want to get captured. So by doing that, when things don't go down their road, and it's not, they think it's more mechanic problem, we can get them back in the studio, capture them, and see the comparisons of what's different from when they were striking it pure to versus where they're struggling now on tour. So that is another, like a nugget I use 3D for. So it is
Love it.
that kind of way I use it as well.
I think that's really powerful. I mean, we are definitely going to work on and show some comparison ranges to like tour pros just for the
Mm,
relative, or for the sort of absolute understanding. But I really think there's more value in understanding how a person moves and then seeing the changes, because I can't hit it like Rory. Why are you comparing me to Rory, right? We don't have anywhere near the same mobility, and I think that sort of applies to everyone. So I think that's just a really key point, and that can only be, you can only learn from that if you're working with somebody over time, right? Like you're coaching them. You're, instead of giving them a lesson, you're actually coaching them over time, and that's where the real value shows itself. So
Could I
let's
throw in
dive
one last
in.
thing?
Yeah,
And like, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, when I started, like many guys who would get into this, they're going to be overwhelmed. They're going to see all these numbers. They're going to go and go, "Oh, what can I do with this?" My best piece of advice for that would be get the system, get a day or 2 days of marketing where you offer a free 3D assessment. Okay, you give them 30 minutes, you get all the data, and that evening or one of the weekends you're off, you sit down in the studio and you go through the data and you start looking. One, you're creating free marketing for yourself because they're going to see something really cool, a new tool. Two, you're going to get a lot of learning. You're going to see patterns that you've probably never seen before on 3D. And you're going to start seeing similar patterns with kind of, you get it, say you get 5 slicers with similar characteristics of swings. You'll start seeing patterns in the numbers themselves. And when we have graphs on Onform later, you'll start seeing similar motions in the graph. So I think that's the way you should get into it if you really want to try and understand the data. Because it's very easy to just go off and read and do courses online. But at the end of the day, how do we all learn how to drive? Get into the car, start
yeah.
driving. Yeah, we're going to crash a few times, but that's just part of the journey of driving.
I think that's great advice, right? Like it's no different than a launch monitor. If you just see the numbers, it's all kinds of numbers. It's how can you actually change the angle of attack? What do you tell a person to do to actually impact path or one of the other numbers? But first of all, you have to know what path means. You have to know what or dynamic loft or any of the things that launch monitors bring. We're opening up a new world here on the way the body moves. So now imagine if you understand how the body moves and you understand how the launch monitor moves, and Onform, you can get all the data. And that's kind of our not so secret strategy. We want to bring objective information to that whole equation, if you will, right? Like what's the body doing, what's the club and the ball doing, and be able to give coaches all the information so that they can then decide how to affect change. And no better way to do that than let's actually take a look at how you use it with one of your players. Let's have you go ahead and share your screen, and we'll do that. While you're getting the screen shared, I just want to answer a question. Some people have asked: is the iPhone and iPad, do they have a good enough camera? And absolutely, they do. I mean, use the Onform app, open the camera, and you have to make sure you're on 120 frames per second. You can be on either 720 or 1080p resolution, but also use our shutter speed control so that, especially in an indoor scenario, if you use the shutter speed control, which is the little running man, you'll see it when you open the camera in Onform. The combination of getting it at 120 FPS or 240 if you want, and then the shutter speed will give you some amazingly good quality video, and you'll be able to generate 3D on any face-on swing. And then since we're talking about graphs, that was the other question that came up. We will have the graphs that I just showed you in the model card coming. And the big one will be the kinematic sequence that people are familiar with through, through lots of ways. But stay tuned. There's a lot more to add there. And yes, we will have some graphs that show you the time series change of how things work too. So take it away, Sergio. I love seeing what you're doing here. Why don't you just talk us through what's going on?
So Samuel is a really good golfer. He was off +6, turned pro this year. One of the main issues he has, he's tendency to keep that face shut at impact. So it kind of tends to shut it a little bit more, a little bit too much shaft lean. And this is just coming from a few little numbers. So last night we had an online lesson, and this is the beauty of this. I'm in my sofa at home at 10 o'clock at night, around 6 p.m. over in America where he is, and I'm able to actually look at numbers and give him quick feedback because I know when he's been in my studio what I need to see on a number perspective to change that ball flight. So with Samuel on the left, he was struggling here a little bit with too much excessive shafting. So what we'll see in the bottom here is pelvis turn, pelvis sway, and pelvis lift. So Pelvis turn is basically the rotation of the pelvis, and pelvis sway is the lateral movement of the pelvis from left to right, and then pelvis lift is just basically the lifting of the pelvis, and we have it on the right. So if we just get into kind of an impact position here with Samuel, and what we start to see with Samuel is we have a lot of, well, kind of about 15, 16 degrees centimeters of sway. We have 42 degrees of rotation, which is open. As you can see in the bottom, it actually gives you what it is. And then the pelvis lift, we have 0.9 up, and this is with a 7 iron. Now it's a frame slightly out. Now with the shutter speed, you can pretty much get it into a good impact position if the lighting is good. And what we have here on the right, we'll see the opposite pretty much now. We start to see 38 degrees of rotation open, so less. We start to see less sway towards the target, but the most biggest number change I found with him last night to actually square that face up more was the lift of the pelvis. So for us to do that, what we got him to feel is trying to add a little bit more vertical force. So Samuel likes to push the foot, the lead foot towards the ball too much, and he likes to add too much lateral, which creates a lot of shafting, as you can see here on the left. But on the right, what we did last night was just getting a lot of vertical, trying to feel that the feet is just pushing up and down. So we did a lot of jumping drills, and we did about probably 30, 40 jumps just with the left foot. And then I got him to hit a few balls, and all of a sudden we start seeing changes in how that pelvis lift was happening. What was more interesting for me, he was going to get average of about 2 to 3 degrees close to target with the face angle at impact. The one on the right, he was getting 3 degrees open. So a massive change for him. Seeing the ball started right, he's more comfortable playing. The minute he sees that ball starting left of target, that's when he goes into panic mode and tries and manipulates the club head. And that we all, most of us as coaches know, starts to lead to problems on the course, and then starting to doubt ourselves. And then that's where the bogeys and the doubles start happening. So for Samuel, the minute he sees that ball starting right of target, he's on fire. He'll start putting birdies on the
Perfect.
scorecard. So that was a really cool kind of thing for me last night. And then I was showing him, and then this morning he was actually texting me, showing more videos. He was at the range saying, look how much I can get it up. He actually got it up, I believe, up to about 4 centimeters. Crazy.
Wow. Wow. I mean,
um,
so just to recap here a little bit for everybody that's watching, you had Samuel set up his iPhone and record himself out at the range
yep.
and share those videos with you. And then you pulled a video from a previous session, maybe back home or something, right? Like,
So the
uh,
one on the left was, yeah, I can bring up ones from back home, but the one on the left was the day before, and the one on is the day
ah,
after. So it's kind of pretty much similar days.
got it.
Again, what he does and the way we have our online structure is he'll have one phone face on, which would be the Zoom call, and that's connected to my iPad, so I can then speak to him directly live. And then I have another phone, and he has another phone for when he has to record swings. So as we're talking, he's uploading videos, and I can keep talking, sending him feedback, which is brilliant.
That's
Not
so
many
cool.
not many apps can do that out there, and that's one of the big beauties of Onform, which I really love this feature where I can just be able to give a lesson straight from my couch.
Yeah, that's so cool. So he's rotating, and some of those numbers, I think it's good to also mention when you see rotation with your eyes, calculating rotation is actually quite complex. And remember how we were going through the sequence of side bend and rotation? Can
Yeah.
you just talk a little bit about sometimes the visual that you see is and how that correlates to what the actual number shows, and how it's a complex piece of math is what it is.
It is like side bends, you can have ranges again, but it's depending on what we wanted that player to do with the club delivery. When I look at face on, I see it was a great example there a couple of weeks ago. I don't have it on, it's on my other laptop. I had a player come in and he says, "Oh, I'm trying to rotate a lot. I feel like I have a lot of very little rotation." I go, "Yeah, you have loads." And I was able to just capture him on form, show him that he had 45 degrees of rotation at the top of the backswing. And he said, "No, I feel like I only have like 20 degrees. And that's my problem. I need to turn more." And the more he was turning, that was creating more problems for him on how to deliver the club back to the ball. So once we started showing him the numbers, he started going, "Okay, so I'm turning too much." Yeah. So you have to turn half that. And then we gave him a little cues on basically his problem was he was trusting rather than trying to turn. So he was trying to turn with a trust rather than turning back. So like when trusting with the pelvis, I like to see it moving back away from where the center point is. So we were able to give him some clues on that, and then all of a sudden he was starting to strike better again, and the slow point was much more control as a result of that. So that's where the kind of eye might show you, oh, it looks like he has very little rotation, but he actually has more rotation than what you actually think. And that's the problem with 2D. Sometimes 2D will actually lie.
Yeah, the combination of side bend and rotations, they play together,
Yeah.
and we've gone through extreme lengths to make sure those can be, as consistent as we can make them through the video.
So
Um,
like back to like the side bends, like what I try and look at when with side bends and rotations is to try and figure out when does the lead hip start moving up in relation to the timing when the pelvis starts rotating back towards the target. So if we're talking about top of the backswing, when that club is changing direction, what do I see with the sway and what do I see with the side bend of the pelvis? So normally I like to see the sway happening before the rotation and then the
hmm.
lifting of the or the side bending of the lead side moving upwards as it starts going into transition. So they're the kind of little things I look at as well.
Cool. I think I want to point out another thing. You've dialed it down. So instead of all 12 pieces of data from the 3D, in fact, if you tap on your little deal there to so just for folks watching, we've designed our 3D system to be very coach centric, meaning you get to show what metrics you want. And in fact, you can even control it so that the student doesn't see anything. But I think this is just a really cool case where Sergio has only focused on three things, right? And each
Yep.
different
Yep.
player you might focus on a different three things depending on what the player needs. But I love how you've got it just so simple down to a couple things, so you're not distracted with 12 different
This
things
is
all the time.
this is the beauty. Like, the problem is you can throw all these numbers up, and then if your player is looking at it, you can start asking questions. But if you only have one number up, that's the number we're focusing on. And that's really cool. And like you can do the same with the left on the left swing. So I just leave pelvis sway, and there you go. I just have the two sways happening side by side. So it's
Love it.
it's a cool feature as well to have in a studio environment when you're working with a player and you throw this onto the big screen behind you or in front of you, and you're able to just kind of pick what you want to show.
Yep, love it. Um, and again, you're using 3D like with every swing, or do you just bring it in on occasion?
I have a program called the Bundle Reload program. So every player that starts that program will get a full assessment. So they'll spend 90 minutes with me. I get them on 3D, force plates, 2D, TrackMan, quad data, you name it. Every piece of technology I can get on them, I'll get it. They don't know they're actually what they're doing, really, in the sense of what data I'm capturing. And then I try and get them doing kind of replicating shots on the course. So I try and replicate a par three, par four, par five from like off the tee, second shots in. And I'm trying to build as much data as possible. So when I go home that evening, I start studying and breaking down basically a plan of action, what I'm going to work with these players over the next 12 weeks. And that's all back from their stats at the end of the day. So because I don't like something I see, I'm not going to go and change it because that could be one of their strengths. But the
Hmm.
3D will allow me to make one small little change that could make a massive change in how they deliver that basically that club head back into the ball.
Think that's great. And if you had one piece of advice for coaches, to get started with 3D or to learn more,
So
okay, maybe even two pieces of advice, what would that be?
embrace it. Don't let it change how you coach, but use it as a tool.
That's so good. Um, do you
And
think,
don't be afraid.
and don't be afraid. Yeah, and tell me, how do your students take to it? Like, you, yeah, what do your students think of the data?
So I would take it in two ways. I found it in two ways. And as a marketing perspective, I found it has brought more clients in because the clients get an experience here and they start talking to their friends. And what I might do is I might not even show them the numbers, but I'll show them the avatar and kind of do like a recap of the session and send it back to them so they have it on their Onform app so they can show their friends and they tend to get it like refer with that. So that's really cool. And then some players will actually ask me, can they use it? So they would love to have the ability. They say to me, "Oh, could I get that where I'm practicing myself and I'm able to look at the number you're telling me and what kind of ranges you want me in?" I think that's going to be a really cool way for them to go and practice. So not just for ourselves as coaches, but for them to have feedback. like they can feel something, but it's not actually what they're feeling. But if they
Hmm.
can see, yeah, I'm swaying too much at this point, I need to keep working on my drill, or I need to make sure that sway doesn't happen as much at a certain point. That's feedback that it's priceless. You're not going to get that from anything else.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, is there any websites or where do you learn about 3D? That was a question in our Q&A. Is
There's
there
tons
some
of stuff
hallmarks?
out there. I think, first thing you need to do is get it on your phone, start using it, start looking at it, start exploring it. And then once you start getting familiar with the numbers and you get familiar how kind of these numbers are produced, start going down the route of courses. Like a great one is the Penn State biomechanics course. I did that. I thought that was really good. There's loads of other ones out there as well. Or even try and find somebody in your local area who actually has a 3D system and go and shadow them for the day. That's another really cool way of learning it. So there's definitely courses, and I think yourself, Gear, and myself agreed that we're going to have something maybe down the road where we can do a course on this and the fundamentals of using 3D.
Yeah.
But if anybody wants to reach out to me, reach out. I'm happy to give my time and give you a bit of insight on how I do things a little bit deeper if you want to see it.
Cool. Yeah, that is something I've seen and learned from you. You're very willing to help and provide feedback and help others. We can, yeah, you're easy. You're an easy guy to find out there. So,
I think I come
well,
across a little bit shyer on video versus, on
yeah.
Facebook. I'm a little bit more louder, as they say, but I'm a good person in fairness, and I like things to be done right. And I think, you know, people who know me know I only want what's good. I don't try and knock down anybody.
Yeah, that's good in this world, right? Well, I think we're coming up. We try and keep these about 40 minutes or so. And the last thing I just kind of want to mention, where is this all going? We've touched on a couple things. Look for improvements inside Onform. One thing we're working hard on right now is our down the line model. Right now, you have to record from face on. So that's coming very soon. Club tracking is coming soon. That'll give you the ability to, jump to the different P points in the swing and, little some good navigation elements there. And the graphs, I can't wait to expose those in the app where you can imagine like you're looking at our screen here. One of those quadrants could be a graph that you can review live in your swings. So we're still just getting started. And yes, Sergio, I think it's going to be pretty amazing. Education is probably the key to the long-term success of any coach, whether that's 3D or not. But we are taking it upon ourselves to come out with some more education material around that, and we intend to have a lot more in the future coming soon. So with that, thanks everybody for joining. Sergio, really appreciate you taking the time to give us some of the insights that you've used. I think we'll probably see you again in the near future and maybe go deeper on some stuff. And if anybody has questions, hit us up, support@onform.com, and we'll even tailor some things for you as we see questions pour in for a future webinar. With that, thanks for joining this evening in Ireland, and for everybody here in the US or elsewhere around the world. Appreciate your support, and thanks so much. Have a good
Thank
rest of
you.
your day or evening. Cheers.